Welcome to Alpha Wolf Capital. I'm Tim, and I want to personally thank you for stopping by. This channel is designed to help small companies, both public and private, gain exposure with potential consumers, investors, even partners. Take, for example, today's guest. CEO Michael Feldschuh and CMO Dr. John Jefferies from Daxor, the Blood Volume Company. It's a very exciting time for Daxor. They're just got 510K clearance on their latest blood volume analyzer. 3 times faster, cordless, and much, much smaller. This is an impact company. This product is going to make a win-win-win for everybody. Insurance companies, patients, healthcare providers, everyone wins with this machine. But I'm going to let Michael and Dr. Jefferies tell you more about that in just a minute. This is not to be taken as investment advice. I am not a certified financial planner. This is for education and entertainment purposes only. I encourage everyone to do their own due diligence.
Our new device offers an opportunity for an accelerated workflow process. This new iteration could be at least 3 times faster than our current approach. And because of that, lends itself to opportunities around quality improvement. So much of quality improvement is about efficiency. That is always a consideration in any provider's mind. But one unique component of this is that we're going to cut the amount of blood required in half, which always is a favorable thing whenever you can reduce the amount of blood draw that's required for a patient. I think it's an exciting opportunity that really does make life a whole lot easier for providers and for patients, which inherently will lead to better engagement and more reliable practice patterns. I think it underscores Daxor's commitment to iterating on an already good technology to making it even better. So that shows that as a company, we're providing the most sort of optimal and cutting edge technologies to our patients and to our providers. And I think this new device is proof positive that we are putting our resources, our time, and our energy into accomplishing that.
So the biggest limitation that we set out to overcome with the new BVA was making BVA more accessible to the clinicians who need it. It means that the results can be available faster. It requires less logistical challenges to schedule a BVA so that we believe that clinicians are going to find it easier to order the test, get the results, and make decisions for their patients faster. The biggest technological development is our patent-pending whole blood collection cartridge, which enables us to very precisely quantify a particular amount of blood. We can count it right in this small instrument that can be held in your hand. So the new BVA just makes that easier. It makes it better. It makes it more accessible. It gives people the tool in their hands, in their clinic, in their hospital, that allows something that not just a few patients receives, but that every patient receives, so that optimal fluid volume care is available to everyone.
New BVA has multiple opportunities to streamline clinical workflow. Part of the workflow is getting it to where the patient is, so it being portable, and that's a remarkable step forward and allows so many people to have access to the mission-critical BVA results. People always ask, what is the clinical case to use BVA? And I always tell them, anybody who has a circulation. So virtually, it's really a vital sign that we overlook and underutilize. First of all, it's portability. The ability to use whole blood is really an advantage. And the sample size being only 3 mLs versus 6 mLs, those are all extremely important. In addition, it remains highly accurate so that nothing is lost and so much is gained with the new BVA.
So with this new design, it makes it much more seamless in terms of operating within the context of an ICU environment. Now you're taking a small amount of blood and you're processing it within minutes. It's a game changer. What BVA represents is the gold standard in terms of what's actually happening in the bloodstream based on the mechanism of how the BVA operates, tagging albumin. And it's essentially giving you what's actually going on intravascularly. And more importantly, for me as an intensivist, the most amazing thing about the BVA capability that I always loved is its ability to detect capillary leak and quantify it. I think the best use case for me is probably in the setting of de-resuscitation. It's a diagnostic that provides a capability in both of those situations for both resuscitation and de-resuscitation that currently does not exist. In the ICU environment where things are happening and changing hour to hour, the albumin transudation rate, without a doubt, is a game changer in my opinion.
As a heart failure cardiologist, the key challenge that we have is around assessing and quantitating the presence of congestion. So it's really quality and quantity. And right now we have hundreds of ways to measure congestion in patients with heart disease. And we unfortunately rely on a lot of imprecise metrics because you had to think of injections and draws, but now it is a lot faster. So I can tell you the clinical case in which we use it right now are the exact cases I will be using the novel technology in as well. Inpatient and outpatient settings where there is a challenge with assessing congestion. And patients that are particularly challenging are patients with overweight, with chronic kidney disease, chronic congestion, lymphedema, patients where edema might have been present for a while, and you just doubt yourself, is this edema actually a reflection of the intravascular blood volume state, the intravascular volume itself? Whether the new BVA will allow the access to be increased, and the patient that will have access will change. I absolutely agree with that. Any form of portable technology that also shortens the amount of time will allow us to spread this not only geographically, inpatient, outpatient, to more distal facilities, but will also allow us to give it to patients that might be only transitional, meaning they're only there for an hour and you cannot wait an additional 30-40 minutes to do this test. The question is, what features of the BVA, of the new BVA, are most compelling to me? The ability to have whole blood, smaller blood volume draw, and all in the same place on a portable platform is a key game changer, because it allows us to remove certainly the spatial barriers. The other feature, of course, is because you remove all the spatial barriers, you already reduce the time that it needs to be done, the duration of the actual testing by 2/3 are gone. You're just left with 1/3 of the testing time. So I think these are the key features that make me excited.
I definitely see the impact on the service line financially and other ways being streamlined with the new system. Obviously, the 3 times faster than the prior one, being able to get the results in a 15-minute time frame. I think the quality metrics will probably be a little bit easier to track with the new system. Just based on tracking, I think it'll be a lot easier to do with having a single draw, probably a big portion of the time. The new system process will allow us to be able to enhance offerings, definitely in the outpatient setting. I think I could see where this can be more scheduled. It's more predictable. and a lot more streamlined for the patients. I do see the new system's application probably helping the workflow in the emergency room. It being a lot quicker turnaround, probably will create leverage by the nuclear medicine department, being able to quickly come over and do this versus trying to fit it in their normal schedule. From a resource standpoint, how long it takes, being cut down into a 15-minute time frame is going to allow for the financial side of this to look a lot better.
Having a tool such as the BVA to accurately assess volume status is important in managing heart failure, because it's the most common symptom with heart failure is edema and shortness of breath. And oftentimes those physical assessment skills do not go along with the symptoms that we're hearing, or we're so volume overloaded that we're needing to immediately admit them to the hospital or put them in the ED for IV diuretics. So having a blood volume analysis outpatient will certainly help with preventing those ED trips and hospitalizations, so that I can manage patients outpatient, feel confident in the diuretics that I'm giving them, and follow up outpatient versus keeping them in the hospital. So I'm pretty excited about the new BVA. If we're able to establish this and get it into our hospital and speed up the results, it's going to be 3 times faster. I think that's very useful. Everything we do in medicine needs to be fast. It's portable. We can use it and eliminate some of the wait in labs and in nuclear departments, et cetera, and be able to get those results quicker and eliminate some of the steps and pieces that are delaying the results. But also providing the same amount of accuracy is huge. We're decreasing the time, but we're still getting the same amount of accuracy. Is going to really give us the data that we need to make confident decisions.
First and foremost, I work in a community-based rural hospital with a relatively small nuclear lab. Since we introduced BVA, balancing the influx of inpatient tests required some adaptation. I predict that the efficiency offered by the new BVA will be immensely satisfying for our nuclear lab techs and patients alike. Many of the questions that I get surrounding BVA are, how long will it take? Do I have to go somewhere for this test? When will I know the results? And this next generation test makes each one of those questions very easy to answer in a way that will set people at ease. Precise blood volume measurement to some still feels like science fiction. It challenges a lot of conventional training and skills that, frankly, providers have been honing for years. I'm hoping that the new BVA will greatly improve the accessibility and help overcome any hesitation providers might feel around being a good steward of resources. And if the treatment depends on diagnostic accuracy, then I can settle for nothing less than having the right patient with the right diagnosis, being cared for in the right setting, in the right way. So specifically, I think of heart failure and the complexities associated with managing this complex condition. For me, it comes back to ease of use. First, for the patient, second, for the technicians administering the test, and third, for the clinicians acting on the results. I have grown, so comfortable and almost dependent on the information that this test has given me. And so I see this next generation device as really overcoming that barrier. And I think that, again, the results speak for themselves. So there are very few conditions in which optimal blood volume does not lend itself to a better outcome.
Hey everybody, Tim from Alpha Wolf Capital coming at you with a update on a fantastic story, one of my favorite stories, one of the most impactful companies out there. I don't think people fully recognize what just happened for this company, but it's a pretty big deal. I've got the CEO and I've got Dr. Jefferies here from Daxor, the blood volume analyzing company. And congratulations to both of you guys.
Thank you so much.
So, Michael, can you, for those that don't know, can you give everybody a quick synopsis of why this approval 510K clearance is such a critical thing?
Yeah, thank you. So Daxor is the global leader in blood volume measurement, and we have manufactured and distributed what's called the BVA 100, which has been the gold standard method of volume measurement for the past 20 years. And what just happened a few days ago is we announced that the FDA has cleared our newest analyzer, which is called the Daxor BVA or the BVA 200. You can see in this picture in the upper corner, that's us being given the honor of ringing the closing bell at the NASDAQ Stock Exchange. And in my hand, I know it's very small, but you can see that I'm holding this small box, and that is the newest handheld size blood volume analyzer. It replaces a unit that literally was like a tabletop machine. This new unit is 3 times faster, 7 pounds, portable, battery operated, lab-based tests. It's designed to substantially speed up the clinical workflow that's associated with doing our test. It's going to make it much more accessible, easier, quicker, and that means more patients are going to get served and at a much lower cost of overhead for hospitals and potentially physician offices as well. So this is a huge deal because getting something that is rapid and accessible will allow care teams to measure blood volume rapidly. And that is a big deal in terms of the clinical impact, because the management of blood volume is a central challenge in medicine. And I'd like to defer to Dr. John Jefferies, who's our Chief Medical Officer, a very accomplished board-certified cardiologist and researcher, just to let him talk more about the context, if that's all right, of what this analyzer really means in terms of its impact on medicine and why blood volume is so important.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Michael. Thank you, Tim, for allowing us to speak with you. We greatly appreciate it, and echo Michael's sentiments about this being a banner day for us. This is a huge opportunity. One, as he alluded to, it really does improve opportunities for patients. But just to frame this from a healthcare provider perspective, this new device greatly amplifies opportunities both on the inpatient and outpatient side. So that means someone admitted to a hospital can use this device, and the turnaround time for results, the processing is greatly reduced. But it also allows this to be operationalized much more broadly in the outpatient space. And so that really covers everything in medicine. You're either an inpatient or an ambulatory patient. So that's all the verticals that we take advantage of. And it's greatly important to understand that one is about access to patients and getting the results, but also thinking about it from the world of a provider. So my job is to be efficient because I have a lot of patients and a lot of things to do. And so on the inpatient side, maybe I have a large queue of patients to see on my list and lots of things to keep up with. Anything I can do to condense the amount of time that's required to utilize a test effectively on the inpatient side is paramount. So this is absolutely a mission critical component of all of that. So because we need those results on the inpatient side to react to them, obviously that patient is there for a reason. We want to address the concern in front of us as quickly as possible because one, it could be life-threatening, right? And the other piece is we want to shorten that length of stay. But on the outpatient side, that's where the majority of patients live, thankfully, right? That's what we want as providers.
Right.
We want them in the clinic. Now we can use this in the clinic to also impact longitudinal care. So it's not a snapshot in time, but it's a perpetual, almost evergreen opportunity when it comes to the testing, which is really, really important. And as Michael alluded to, the test it solves a fundamental problem or challenge in medicine. And I would even extend that answer to say, for which we don't have an adequate solution without BVA. And that is exact. So every day, do I think I'm solving the volume question? Of course I do. But unfortunately, I'm getting it wrong as a clinician if I don't use BVA. So that's the fundamental premise here, is that this isn't just creation for creation's sake, and it's some additive thing that now we can bolster a list of technologies. This actually fundamentally solves a problem that touches a variety of conditions, everything from cardiovascular disease to kidney disease to oncologic and hematologic processes. So I know that's a hard thing to frame in this short period of time, but if you digest what I'm saying, these are untapped and almost endless opportunities, which we're really excited to pursue.
Which you've made extremely convenient by having a portable unit
Yes,
that
sir.
sits in your hand. You take it to the bedside, right? I mean, it's right
I
there.
mean, the it's very attractive that it is portable. It is still meant to be a lab-based test, so that means that, the operators will still have to have certain licenses and certain skilled operators in place to be able to do it. But when you think about how much of a premium space is in an urban hospital setting or in a physician office setting, or how much of a burden tech time is. In other words, people are like, look, we get a lot of test requests. If this test takes too long, it's not going to get done, or you're not going to be able to schedule the patients in a fast fashion, right? So just everything that you can do to make it portable and quick and simple. The test, for example, even requires smaller blood draws than the old unit did. So that means that it's less of an impact on the patient. So it counts faster, it takes less blood, it gives results that have been shown to be just as accurate as the gold standard predicate device. And so all of those things factor in when people think, well, can I put this into my clinical workflow, and getting people used to it. And so, this device was developed in response to requests from the US military that wanted a portable rapid analyzer. Why? Because blood volume care is at the center of a lot of military decisions. Are you going to give somebody a transfusion? Do they need saline? How do you handle with somebody who's in burn? What if they're going into shock? Over 30% of our warfighters, for example, have some kind of blood volume related casualty. And so that is a paramount need for the military. And that's one of the reasons why we teamed up with the Defense Health Agency and the US Army to develop this. But at the same time, civilian intensive care units are dealing with gunshot wounds, people in shock, people who've been burned. And then there's pre and post surgical care and blood loss there. There's the management of heart failure, hypertension, things like syncope. It just goes on, right? Every time you think about somebody who has like an IV pole next to them, or they're being given a diuretic, that's volume management. And we manage the volume of patients because the blood is what is the conduit for our red cells. That's how we perfuse the tissues. That's how we breathe, literally. And so we always have to maintain a stable blood volume and pump it with our heart. That's how we live. So this is really something that will surprise a lot of people, is that a lot of times care teams are not very certain about the exact volume status of the patient. So there's a high stakes choice that has to be made sometimes around whether to give fluid or not to give fluid, or to give a certain type of drug or not give that drug. If they guess wrong, and it's easy to get it wrong because it's a very hard thing to know, sort of like asking somebody to say, well, how many jelly beans are in this jar of jelly beans? But by the way, it's painted black. So I'm not going to let you pick it up, and I'm not going to let you look inside of it, but tell me how many jelly beans are in there. It's hard to guess, right? Well, it's hard to know how much blood is circulating inside the body. So these care teams, they use a lot of proxy measures and a lot of clinical acumen. The problem isn't their skill or their training. The problem is not having the right tool to manage this. And that's where BVA really comes in.
That is I mean, that is like the oldest one. You want to do the job right, get the right tool.
Right.
Right. I mean, I just had that experience in my front yard when I had to take down a tree.
Mm-hmm. Right.
I had to go get a chainsaw.
Well,
Right?
so if you want to use that analogy, it's like our existing older device worked really well, but that's like one of those old saws where there's like a handle on each end and you got to get a buddy to help cut it down. And this new device is like a chainsaw, basically.
Exactly.
That's the best analogy, I would say.
So, Dr. Jefferies, you said something that really kind of stuck out to me here when you said, if I'm going to guess, in a lot of time, is it really like the flip of a coin?
Well, it's in the minds of practitioners, it's not a guess. They think that they're using the best tools available. The problem is that they're really not using the best tools available, as you just alluded to. So part of our mission, obviously, and our opportunity is to educate people is that, hey, as opposed to using the two-person, old skill saw, maybe we can give you a chainsaw and know exactly where to cut. And I think that's kind of building on that analogy a little bit in that it's a faster, more precise technology that actually gets at the problem in a more targeted way. So clinicians have tools to use to measure this. They're just tools that aren't designed to measure what we're talking about. They measure something else. And they use those measurements as a surrogate, thinking that I'm measuring here and I think I can use that to transpose and understand something over here. And it just doesn't work that way. And it's not because clinicians aren't interested. It's because in the past they haven't had a tool that really did this reliably, right? They used other things. Now they do. So you can imagine this is a tremendous this sort of blue ocean opportunity that is really out there that's available, as you've alluded to, and as Michael has spoken about. And now it's just about increasing awareness in parallel with generating data to help them to understand the utility of the test. And that's exactly what we're doing.
That's
So
right.
this is one of these examples of, to me, that this is a company. This is the beautiful thing about the stock market. This is a company that has a product. The company's been around since how long, Michael?
We've actually been a publicly traded company for over 50 years now. And what's amazing is that our share count is the same as when we went public. We never reverse split the stock.
I know.
We still have
I've been
about
meaning
5
to
million
talk to you about
shares,
that too, Michael.
and we have a perfectly clean cap table with no warrants and no significant long-term debt. I mean, it's a very unusual story, obviously, with how
It
it's
is
been developed.
incredibly, insanely unusual. There is a very small share count. And I'm going to tell you right now, I guarantee you, if I get some guy that's like, oh, I totally get this story, I'm going to go out tomorrow and buy 50,000 shares. No, you're not.
I mean, you can accumulate shares. What I would say is the other day we traded over 1 million shares,
Yeah.
actually, when the news came out. And there are days where,
I was
yeah.
shocked by the reaction of the stock price. I'm sorry. I just thought you guys were going to have a much bigger move because this is massive news. This is game-changing news for the company.
Well, sometimes things take a little while to percolate. We're used to the stock market instantly reacting to news. But if you look at, like, for example, like look at when Google went public.
Yeah.
Google went public in a kind of unusual way. They did a direct sale to shareholders. And then it took time for the stock to rally and for people to realize it. The market takes its time. And you got to remember that there's always people who are trading versus investing. Traders just try to want to jump in and jump out. And then there's other people who start to really dig in and do their homework and then take long-term positions and build on it. I think those people are starting to digest and understand what this means and perhaps start to recalibrate their expectations on the back of it.
Well, for those that don't understand, I'm going to try and clarify. This is an opportunity to be part owner, because that's what you are when you buy shares of a company.
Mm-hmm.
A part owner of saving. Now, I did a deep dive on this thing through Perplexity AI, and the amount of lives that you could save per year, and the amount of dollars you could save insurance and hospitals, staggering numbers, right? And to me, and Dr. Jefferies, maybe you could the applications, like you were saying earlier, it's not just cardiovascular. I mean, you're a world famous cardiologist, but it is so much more than just cardiology, right? I mean, it can be applied to so many things. Every hospital should have this. I don't know. In my head, this is like a no-brainer, right? This should become of, like, when I go in, I get what they check my pulse, right? They have that little series of things that they do. Why wouldn't this be one of those things that they do? Right?
It definitely could be. And to your point, you're absolutely right. The way we view the test is as being agnostic. So it's not a test for cardiovascular medicine. It's not a test for ICU medicine. It is a test that gives you information on patients where volume matters and red blood cell status matters. That's pretty much everyone in a hospital collectively. And I'll just give you some numbers to digest. So just in cardiovascular, we deal with things like heart failure. So you've talked about that prior. That's about 6.5, 7 million people in the United States. Okay, so that's one vertical. You could easily make the argument that the test can be used for hypertension or high blood pressure, right? You probably know somebody in your family that has high blood pressure and it's probably poorly managed. That's the typical scenario for a variety of reasons. That's about 110 million people in the US. That's just cardiovascular. Let's think about sepsis. Kills more patients, unfortunately, on the inpatient side in the hospital than anything else in the United States. Test has perfect applicability for something like sepsis management. So we agree with you that the opportunities are vast. And the other takeaway is that the test can add value along different parts of the continuum, right? You might think, well, I can only use the test at the time of admission. No. Well, I can only use the test for a new patient in a clinic. No. Actually, it adds value across the lifespan of that. And as you said, the goal of everything we do in medicine is to improve life, right? We're trying to improve quality and outcomes. This test is an easy leverage or an easy lever to pull for providers. It's accessible. It's being, widely democratized, and the use cases are pretty much as broad as you can think of. Whether it's a sepsis patient, whether it's a cardiovascular patient, whether it's someone with a blood cell dyscrasia, with kidney disease, the use cases are as broad as you can think of if you keep in mind the simple premise of the test. It measures intravascular volume very accurately, and it tells you information about red blood cells that otherwise you're probably not going to get. Then the clinician can think, well, framed with that understanding, where could I use this? I can use it in a lot of places, right? So that's my goal. That's my job in the company, is to help people to understand that.
And so, and I'll just say to follow up on that, we're not saying that every single one of these patients is going to get it, but what we are saying is that every single one of these patients might plausibly be considered for the test, and that there could be a substantial uptake as a result of that. And I think that that's really, when we talk about these categories of patients, because obviously care is very diverse and people are going to make their own decisions, but that's why making the test easier and faster and simpler to do reduces down that friction, and it's going to, we believe, substantially increase the number of places that have said, great, let's bring this in and start making it available to help manage these patients.
So this is where I go back to, this is the opportunity to own shares in a company, and especially if you're in the healthcare industry and you understand this stuff, right? I mean, if you really understand that what this product does and that it will change outcomes, this would be a no-brainer of an investment for me, because I know that I am going to have positive results from using this item in my hospital or in my clinic, and I become an advocate for that, right? I mean, this isn't really difficult concept here. This is like,
well, I think there's an interesting part to this, Tim, right? Which is this, one of the interesting from it, now we're talking, because we're on really an investment podcast as well too, right? So let's talk for a second. You might say, hey, what's served hundreds of millions of people, well, at this point, probably billions of people, that is essential for modern life and society. It's led to endless amounts of benefit for mankind, and which nobody has made any money investing in for 100 years, aviation. People would be like, what, one of the worst stocks to ever own has been like a commercial airline. Obviously, there's been times when it's been good and you can make money in it, but overall, it's not a great industry to have been an investor in, right? Same thing probably for like General Motors stock, even though they've made cars and trucks and helped everybody. So sometimes a company that's doing a great thing isn't necessarily a great investment. Unfortunately, sometimes companies that are not doing such good things are good investments, right? Like we can think of companies that make some unhealthy products that the investors have probably done well. So one thing that people who are listening to your podcast might wonder is, they might say, okay, Tim, like, this is great. I get that this is a company that's going to impact a lot of patients and do well, but what's the business model that's compelling? The one thing I would say to your listeners is this: if you think that we are in the business of making and selling that analyzer that I'm holding in my hand, you don't understand our company. And that's probably perplexing, because you're like, I thought that you're holding this analyzer and isn't that the big deal, Mr. CEO, of why you're on this podcast, et cetera. And the answer is for people to understand what it is. Every single time our test is run, there is a test kit, which is a radiopharmaceutical, which is injected into the patient, is utilized, and then the resulting blood from that is put into that analyzer that's there. So every single time the test is run, they buy a test kit from our company, which makes them. And so what that means is people don't just buy one analyzer and then have it sit there and just put blood in it all day. Every single time a test is run, that is a test kit that's sold. So this is the so-called proverbial razor blade model of a company, right? And that means that we're really, going to be driving recurring revenue from every single time the test is utilized and made. We're not in the business of selling like PET scanners or CT scanners. We're much more, in that sense, more like a pharmaceutical diagnostic company, which is what we really are.
And that is covered too. That has a code.
Oh,
right?
yes. And we have reimbursement coverage, and we're covered by both public and private insurance. We have CPT coding. That's another thing that a smart investor is going to ask. They're going to be like, well, what's the business model? Does it have insurance coverage? And the next thing they're going to say was, well, is there medical evidence to back up what you guys are saying? And again, I'll defer to Dr. Jefferies to talk about the level of medical evidence and what that looks like around what this test does.
Yeah, I mean, substantial and growing daily. We have so many published investigations, remembering that as you started, how long has the company been in existence and been traded? It's been around multiple decades. And during those decades, evidence generation has occurred. So we have evidence as old as I am, even from stuff that's going to be presented next month and everything in between. So this is an ongoing story. We haven't just decided, well, we have the information we need and we're just going to let people think what they will. We continue to iterate on the knowledge, on the technology, and our ability to grow the use case scenarios for the tech for BVA. And I think that's what's most exciting, is that we have a robust amount of contemporary medical education and evidence that's peer reviewed that continue to broadly support the use of the technology. And in medicine is a little different than on the business side. That's really how we amplify or broadcast our messaging, is through publications, through presentations and publications. So I think we're approaching this across multiple verticals to get the word out. And so that's really exciting.
Yep.
So KOLs, do you have a growing list of KOLs?
Yes, sir. Just signed another one yesterday.
Okay. So, I mean, that's a big validation point for a lot of stuff, right? When you get the KOLs.
Absolutely. And not just KOLs, but KOLs across multiple disciplines. And
Right.
that's what I've been intent on, is if I just hire 20 cardiologists, eventually it becomes an echo chamber, right? We don't want that. We want diversity, we want difference of thought, and we want different disciplines. So we want nephrologists and critical, as Michael was talking about, Dr. Chung and other people. We have different verticals, different providers who provide completely different perspectives, but they also provide different connectivity that I cannot provide.
Right.
If you're a critical care doc, you're going to trust another critical care doc more than a cardiologist. So this has business implications, but it also has patient care implications.
Mm-hmm.
This is like a win-win-win all the way around, right?
I mean, that's what you really want. First of all, first and foremost, you want something that's really great for the patients. And that can mean both keeping them out of the hospital, extending their lives, and when they're out, improving the quality of their lives. Patients who have these challenges and get their volumes effectively managed feel better, live longer, and don't get admitted to the hospital nearly as often. The next piece,
right?
Or readmitted. And then the next piece to that is that that's better for the insurance companies too, because then the cost of care is lower, because it's very expensive to hospitalize somebody, right? Then the next piece is that it actually makes things better for the hospitals, because when they do treat somebody, they treat them more effectively, more quickly, and they save costs and time, and they don't go in the wrong direction. So if you can make something that's good for the patients and is good for the payers, and it's actually good for the bottom line of the country, then you really have something, if it's a workable business model, that is very, very compelling, right? And that's really the way that we view what we have going forward, because it is a win for all of the different stakeholders within it. And you might say, well, so like, look, I'm no doctor or medical expert. Can you just put it in simple words why this thing works? Why does this thing do all these things, right? What I always tell my friends who ask me something like that is I say something like this. The start of every effective treatment begins with an effective diagnosis. First, before you treat somebody, you got to know what's wrong with them. And if they have a volume problem and you're using surrogate measures, like Dr. Jefferies just said, and you get it wrong, not because you're a bad doctor, but just because you don't have the right tool, then everything that follows from that incorrect diagnosis is not going to be effective. As a matter of fact, it might even harm you. So if you can solve that first principle problem, the first principle, start with an accurate, effective diagnosis, every single treatment that comes from there is going to be more effective. That's a long-winded way of me saying the following. What our test does is it allows for existing conventional treatments to be far more effective, right? And that is very powerful. It's not an expensive new drug. It's not something that costs a fortune for them to implement. And what it does do,
it's helping identify the correct problem early.
correct. Once you know what the problem is, they've got a lot of ways of handling it. And a lot of those ways, by the way, are using drugs and treatments and therapies that are not on patent anymore, that are not, as a matter of fact, a lot of the harm reduction is just having people not do the wrong thing. Right? Somebody's like, well, I ran the test and I was going to give you this powerful drug that would have sent you off and maybe damaged your kidneys. But now that I ran the test, I know that's not the problem. I'm going to go in this other direction. So, there's a lot of power in that first principle. And that's what this test does. It solves this initial problem, which is really seeing what's the volume, what's the red cell status of this patient. And absent our tests, which is 98% accurate, clinicians don't know. And what studies have shown, and we have data, again, this is what Dr. Jefferies was alluding to. We have data that suggests in a lot of scenarios, they're getting that measurement wrong over 50% of the time. So just think about what a big deal that is. A lot of times what happens is they get it wrong, they treat the patient gets worse, and then they reverse course if they can, if it's not too late. And then they row the boat back all the way in the other direction because they thought that the patient was too high. Actually, no, they're too low, and they made it even worse. So this is, again, we have the utmost of respect for the dedication and the professionalism and the acumen of these clinicians that we are honored to work with. We really do. I want to be so clear that it's not that they're not dedicated or highly trained or focused or wanting the best for their patients. Again, they just don't have the right tool to answer the question. It's like if I said, look, Tim, you're going to have to run a shoe store, but, the only way that you can fit somebody with shoes is I'll tell you how tall they are. So you got to give them a shoe based on, you can't measure their foot, but you got to fit them for shoes. You'd be like, well, he's 6 feet tall. Maybe he wears a 9. I don't know. Maybe it's an 11. You don't know, right? You can't use one thing to measure the other thing, even if there's some kind of loose correlation. And that's what's going on right now because precision matters in medicine. You've got to have individualized, precise care. That's what's going to move the needle.
This makes so much sense to me. Like I said, I can't understand why every single clinic and every single hospital should have one or two of these things, right? I mean,
well, again, things happen slowly in medicine and then they pick up with tremendous speed. That's the nature of it. One of the things that's funny is, like, for example, studies have shown it can take as much as 20 years for something to go from the initial discovery towards broader adoption. We're actually at that mark right now. We're literally at that about 20-year mark where we've got it. And now all of a sudden we're seeing a tremendous upswing in adoption and papers coming out and people interested in this. And let's face it, healthcare costs are a real problem. So anything that can lower the costs by using existing conventional therapies more effectively, of course, that's what you would want to use.
That's what I was saying. If we can just improve a little bit every day, right? I mean, and this is a perfect example of a product that is going to help in so many different areas: insurance, hospital stays, patient quality of life. The list just goes on and on and on, right? So when you talk about the adoption curve, and this is one of the things that I am very focused on, because I've come to realize there are a lot of amazing companies out there, and you said it earlier, a lot of them don't make it, right? And that is because of the adoption curve. Getting people to do things differently is so freaking hard. I mean, I don't care. You could say it saves lives, but let's face facts. That's a nice thing to hear, but it really doesn't matter to you unless it's someone that you're close to, right? I mean, if you say, oh, it saves lives, but if you say it's going to save my brother, that's a whole different thing, right? That becomes very personal to me. Then all of a sudden I'm behind you, right?
Well, the fact is that it's not my idea. I think it was like the famous Zig Ziglar who said, if you solve your customers' problems, they'll solve your problem, right? So you got to ask yourself, first of all, what is my customer's problem? If you're talking to a clinician, their problem is how do I make this accurate diagnosis, but also how do I keep my patient from readmitting or dying because I, as a physician, am judged based on that. If you talk to an insurance company, their problem is I need to save money. So how does your product solve that problem? If you talk to a patient, they're like, I don't want to die and I want to feel better. How does your product solve that problem? Right. So that's why we think about the different stakeholders within the healthcare system. And we say, how is our product solving their problem? Because if we solve their problem, they will change and actually use what we have. And one of the problems that they've said to us up to now is they say, we love your test, but it does take a little bit of time and effort and energy and resources to run it. So their voice, the customer voice, saying, we would love it if this thing wasn't so cumbersome and big and didn't take so much time. And the result is, boom, modern, handheld, rapid, portable unit, touchscreen, super modern electronics, and you're welcome. So, that's the genesis of this. This is us listening to our customers to solve one of their big problems, which is how can we just do this? We love it. Just make it faster and a lower burden to do it and more rapid and available. And that's why, driving change comes from them wanting to change. And what they want to change is they want their problem solved.
Yeah. So, all right, Michael, let's talk real quickly about, we already talked about the share count, but give it to us again, just for fun. Outstanding.
Sure. Outstanding number of shares is around 4.9 million shares and change. I think we went public and I think it was like 71 or 72 with about 5 million shares. We actually bought back a lot of shares over the years as a company. We've done a few small offerings, a few years ago and stuff like that. But we run a very tight ship as a company, very high insider ownership, just so you know.
Is that over 50? I think that's over 50.
Over 50%. Yeah, the founding family still owns over 56% of the shares. I'm the CEO of the company. I get paid just $100K a year, publicly available. I'm also one of the largest shareholders. So I just believe in being partners with my shareholders. Single share class. There's no dual listing, no warrants, no converts. Totally clean cap table.
And just for everybody, so everybody knows, Michael, you have a background in you ran a quant fund, didn't you?
Yeah, I was a hedge fund manager for many years. I was fortunate enough to get my start actually at DE Shaw, and I was a managing director at Millennium Partners and a portfolio manager there for 8.5 years, and was also a manager and a portfolio manager for Morgan Stanley, both as a proprietary trader and as a hedge fund manager in their asset management division before starting my own small fund. So I spent over 20 years on Wall Street. I have a pretty good idea about, from an investor point of view, I just put myself in the shoes of the investors, and I think, what would I want to see if I were going to buy a share and be a partner with somebody? What would make me happy? What would piss me off? I don't totally really agree with the ethos of a lot of business school approaches about how to build a high impact, tech company. There's a lot of different ways to do it. I know that we have a little bit of an unconventional thing going, but I believe strongly in building shareholder value by focusing on the execution, the details, being very good stewards of capital, good stewards of the cap table itself, and positioning the company for very substantial long-term growth and building a deep moat around the tech of the company. So we have numerous patents. We've got a lot of proprietary IP. We are many, many, many years ahead of any even a remote distant competitor in our estimation. And we're building that lead.
Recently also did an acquisition. So you brought everything in-house, right? I mean,
yeah, we're in the process of being completely vertically integrated. We build our technology here in the United States. We're headquartered in the great state of Tennessee. We have a 20,000 square foot facility there. We have clean rooms, pharma manufacturing suites. Our suppliers are here, and we're in the process of consolidating and vertically integrating within it. So we're huge believers in America and the ingenuity and the value of the American worker and our healthcare providers and our scientists and data team. It's
you actually
just the
made
best
me
place
think.
to work.
You hear people complain about the Department of Defense, how much money gets thrown at them from the government. But this is kind of a whole different way of looking at it. Who would think that the DOD is who made this thing that saves lives, right? I mean, everybody thinks war when they hear DOD. And
I mean, military medicine is huge. I think only people who don't know anything about where all of these interventions came from. I mean, the U.S. military was experimenting with albumin transfusions during World War II. All of the technology around a lot of shock and trauma treatment comes from things that were done during Vietnam. The U.S. military pioneered having rapid helicopters to evac people from the battlefield and triage people and to do military medicine. It makes me sad to hear that people would think that it's only about that. First of all, we need to have a very effective defense department to keep our country safe. That's just a given. But separate and apart from that, the people who are involved in military medicine are some of the finest people I've ever met. And they do fund a lot of research and a lot of forward-thinking projects that then have applicability into the civilian world. As a matter of fact, when you work with the military, one of the first things they tell you is, we want you to build something that will help civilians as well as the military. And they do that for two reasons. First of all, they're here to help us as a whole country. But second of all, they want to invest in companies that will develop a technology that is stable. So if you only have something that's used by the military and there's no war going on, how are you going to keep your company going, right? Now, so most of our tech funding has come from a lot of these contracts around the development of this analyzer system, but the applicability really goes to the civilians and also the Veterans Administration. So we've got a lot of people in the VA system who really will benefit from this military health spending. Their time in the military as active service members might be over, but our commitment to them is not. So servicing the VA with this technology is really powerful, and it's part of our mission.
So we've got a market cap right now of what, Michael?
It's around $50 million, which I think it's kind of hilarious.
And would I be out of line, Dr. Jefferies? Would I be out of line if I said I believe this should be $1 billion valuation company?
You wouldn't be out of line. You'd be conservative.
That's what I thought.
Now, this is a doctor's opinion, so we're gonna have to write you a prescription around that.
No, I believe this is right. So I was being conservative with the $1 billion, but I thought that was a pretty impactful number from where it currently sits, which is 50 million. Right?
I mean, what I would say about it is, look, as a company, we don't really give forward forecasts about sales and revenue and share price, etc. But yeah, no, I mean, it's fine. We do feel though that if you look at other companies and what their products serve and what their addressable market is, so much of what it comes down to is the company set up to execute effectively? That's really the question. As an investor, I might say, like, you have a great product, but can you execute on this? Can you drive the adoption? Addressable markets or obtainable markets, all these things look great. If you look at forward-looking estimates from growth-related companies, everybody's got this hockey stick. Everybody claims they're going to explosively grow, et cetera, et cetera. The problem is that the vast majority of these companies are burning a huge amount of capital right now, and they're not at that break-even point. That's not where Daxor is. Daxor is actually excited. We announced that we were break-even within Q1 of this year, and we're investing a lot in future technology. So from an operational level, we're already at that place and growing sequentially. So that to me is part of just the fiscal discipline of running an effective business that does have the potential to grow to a much higher valuation.
I want to remind everybody that Dr. Jefferies, you world-renowned cardiologist, but you also just went back to school for a little while, right? Where did you go to school at?
Someplace called Wharton. I did, so I consider that my midlife crisis. Some people buy a 911 Turbo. I decided to go and get an MBA. So, it's been very helpful for exactly these kinds of discussions. And Tim, your insights and your energy around this, I think, is just really appreciated. And we couldn't agree with you more that the opportunities are there. And now we have, an iteration on a really good technology that's even better to really position us in a place that I think we can grow and expand. And as Michael said, most importantly, help people.
Mhm.
We're going to help people, right?
Right.
Obviously, financially, we'd love to see success, as all people do. And I think anybody would know that we'd be lying if we don't want to see financial success. But the real driver here is we're going to help people. And that
We're
is
gonna save lives.
this opportunity. That is a tremendous opportunity.
I mean, I think one of the things that people need to understand is that I think one of the things that's evolved with tech companies going forward is that people have understood something, that if you want to help a lot of people, you need to be a financial success. We live in a capitalist healthcare system.
Yep.
So I know that our driver is to be very financially effective and successful. The more our share price goes up, the more people we reach, the more that we are able to distribute our technology. Yes, the company is going to do very well, and the share price should follow suit. And that success will give you the substrate to further expand, drive research and iteration, et cetera. One of the things about people who are highly effective within tech around this is that they have understood this virtuous cycle for a long time. So if you look at Elon Musk, for example, as somebody who said, I want to affect the change of adopting electric cars. He wasn't like, I'm going to start an organization that runs around with placards outside of GM and castigates them for not having electric cars. He says, I'm going to start an electric car company. And then that is going to be so financially successful, it's going to drive the change that you want to see. Right. And then that led to SpaceX and so many other things that he was able to affect. However you feel about his politics or whatever it is that he does, whether you agree with him or you don't agree with him, the reality is that the model is, if you want to affect the change in the world, making a successful company that's an ethical company that drives towards that change is the way to get that.
I'm going to take that a step further. Everyday individual investors, retail investors, can have that same impact by investing in those companies like Elon Musk, right? That's what the individual investor can become a brand ambassador. They don't necessarily have to be the biggest investor. They can just help share the word about the company and how important it is, and here's why, right? We could go do rallies and have these things about, Democrats and Republicans and flood the streets. And what does all that shit do? Nothing. In my view, it does nothing except create more divide. I've never asked myself, when I come across a company that can have a positive impact on humanity, I've never once asked myself, I wonder if that's a Republican or a Democrat that owns that business.
Mm-hmm.
Who gives a shit?
Mm-hmm.
They're going to make an impact on the world, right? The adoption curve shrinks if more people start sharing the benefits
Mm-hmm.
and the importance of, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's if we spent more time focusing on companies like this, as opposed to all the things we can argue about that we don't agree on, which does nothing. Spend your time finding companies like this. There's a lot of them. There's a lot of them.
I have to say, it's a pleasure for me. Look, I spent a lot of years on Wall Street. I worked hard and I served my clients as best I could, and I was happy to help them build their wealth and be a part of their financial success. But that pales in comparison for me with the satisfaction of applying all of our energy towards what we're building here. Because we get calls all the time from care teams that say, where they say, hey, we ran the test, we got this really unusual result. It totally changed the case. We want to share it with you. We want to write it up for a medical journal. We suddenly realized that we had this case all wrong until we ran your test and we saved the patient's life. That happens all the time with our company. And so we know that we're doing the right thing. And the thing that we want is to share this much more broadly and have it adopted very widely as a result. And that's why, again, running full circle to this whole talk, that's why this new analyzer is so thrilling, because we know that you reduce the friction. It just makes it easier. People are just more likely to do it. I mean, why do I brush my teeth? Because like the toothbrush and the toothpaste are on the sink. It's easy. It's right there. You know what I mean? Just wake up and do it, and go do it before you go to bed. It's like human beings are susceptible to convenience, and we all know that. And so that's why, you got to get people in the habit and make it part of their care flow.
This is going to be an inflection point for this company. I think as more case studies come out and more results start hitting the tape, people are going to understand how impactful this company is. I think right now, and I'm talking to the retail investors, I do talk to institutional guys, by the way. I'm not just retail focused, but I can tell you right now that if I was a retail investor, and I can say this because normally I don't tell people what to buy and what to sell. That's not what I do. What I do is I try to present compelling opportunities to people and let them do their own due diligence and take their own. But I would say this: buy one share. Buy one share. I could say that. It's $10, right? Anybody could, most people could afford to buy something for $10. Buy one share. That way you will pay attention to what's happening with the company. And imagine if 80 million people tomorrow went out to buy one share. Good luck. How many are there? 4.9. That's going to be tough, right? But that's in my head. I think about the divide between the haves and the have-nots. You could get involved in this company for $20, for $50. I mean, $100, whatever you want to do, get involved, learn about the company, help make a difference in the world. This is all positive. Everybody wins. By this company succeeding, more lives are saved, right? Everybody wins.
Well, and back to your point, Tim, about adoption curves, this whole idea of crossing the chasm is a big component of that, right? So you have innovators on the front end that buy. What you're promoting is that early adopter strategy, which is exactly how you realize success on that adoption curve. And so I think that's true on the financial side, and I think it's true on the medical side. We need people that are more early adopters that understand the value. That's how you cross that chasm. And that's exactly what you're promoting on the financial side as well. So I like what you're promoting there.
Okay. You guys feel as though I missed anything here? I could talk to you guys for like 12 hours straight.
Thank you. That's very kind. I mean, I think you've captured a lot of the company and the story. And I think that, your emphasis on this as an inflection point for the company. The main thing is like what we said is, for your listeners to understand how impactful this technology announcement is. We compare it like this is like going from a flip phone to the iPhone 16. Like, people have to really understand like the leap that this involves and what that means, right? What that means. That's really the biggest, that's the biggest thing. It's like going from, I don't know, having to put a CD into your thing to listen to music, to be able to just stream it. It's just that convenience, it's so important everywhere. Every consumer company knows that. But it applies to healthcare too. What's easiest is best. And that's why this is such a really big deal. And I think you captured it really well.
Michael, is there any need to raise capital? I guess that would be the one thing that people would be concerned about is, to market the product or to hire more salespeople, or Is there?
Well, that's actually a really big difference between our company and other companies that are just getting approval for the first time. We already have an existing customer base. We have a sales team. We have infrastructure. We have manufacturing set up. We've made those investments. So this is a follow-on product to our existing revenue generating business. So
Okay.
we don't have all of those costs and all of those delays. You know, you might invest in a company and they get approval in January. They might not even see their first dollar of revenue until that September or November. You know what I mean? Because of the delays of what it takes to spin up. And you have to find somebody who can manufacture this thing, and you have to find somebody who can sell it. And by the way, the time between when they say they want to buy it and when they first actually, pay for it and get it installed and then start ordering and then pay your invoice, it can be a lengthy period of time. So, Daxor already starts out with all of that having been solved, including the reimbursement side of this. And so that's a huge differentiator between us and what's there. Look, growth companies are always opportunistic about capital. If you're not, then you're not running your company correctly. But what I would say is that we are incredibly judicious about the share count, and anytime we do it, if we ever decide to raise money in the future, it's because we see it as an accelerant, as additive, as something that's going to make that trajectory go even faster. There's the right reason and the wrong reason to raise money for a company. The wrong reason for an investor, from an investor's eyes, in my view of raising money, is because you're putting good money after bad. You've got a money-losing company with a broken business model and a bad future and a greedy set of executives who just want their comp structure paid, and they want to make sure the corporate jet keeps getting fueled up. So they're dilutive to the shares, and the investors take it on the chin round after round. That's a terrible stock to want to own. That's a bad business partner, in my view. A great company on the flip side is one that says, yeah, we're going to take in this capital and we're going to step on the gas, and we're going to take the thing that's already working and we're going to go 5, 10, 20, 30x on that thing. That's the kind of thing where, a lot of times think about how private companies are. You will see companies that do successive rounds, A rounds, B rounds, on the private equity side, and the valuation keeps going up. The reason why the valuation keeps going up is because they're hitting their milestones and investors are putting in more money at a higher valuation to accelerate that private company's growth. Weirdly, in the public markets, when a public company raises money, a lot of times people punish the shares from a supply demand perspective instead of thinking, look, well, maybe management of this public company has some really good use of proceeds and it's going to be highly effective for driving the earnings forward. So, whether you raise money or not in and of itself is not necessarily good or bad. The question is, why are you raising it, and what's done with the proceeds? And is the underlying structure of the company and the business model and the team that's executing it sound or not? That's really the question.
You want to know my biggest fear with this company? You sell too early. I think somebody eventually is going to want to gobble you up. That would be my biggest concern.
I mean, I would say that, the model for most large companies is that they do acquire the very few successful entrepreneurial companies that manage to fight their way through FDA approval and reimbursement and clinical validation and stuff like that. And it's not just true in med device companies or diagnostic companies. It's true in pharma. It's true. Look, Google and Facebook and all these companies. What they do is they let the invisible hand of the market and Darwinian capitalism determine who has a better thing. They're not usually in the business of doing seeding for a venture. Like that's not their time frame and that's not their expertise. They're like, we'll just let the market sort it out, and then we'll pluck the few winners out of there and then put them on our large distribution platforms, et cetera. What I can say is that when those deals do occur, they do occur usually at valuations that are in the 9 and 10 figure level. So Daxor is still pretty far away from that, and I see a lot of upside and growth, and we still have a lot to prove, both to the investor community but also to the medical community, so that they understand our story as well too, and that's what we're really focused on.
Well, this was a big milestone right here. This, I think, is going to be this is it. You said it earlier. Are they executing? I would say you are executing. Look, there's nothing you could have done to make the FDA 510K clearance go any faster, right? I mean, it is what it is. So now it's done. That hurdle is behind you. That was a big hurdle, right?
Yes, we think of it as a pivotal milestone in our plan, and we're very excited that we got it through. You know, if the market hasn't fully digested it or reacted to it or valued it, well, then therein lies this small thing called opportunity.
Bingo. That's why we're here. All
There
right,
you go. All right,
gentlemen.
thank you so
When
much.
do we have a follow up, Michael? When do you think we should come back?
Maybe 3-4 months, something like that, if that makes sense. Give us some time to like get units into the field, get a report out or two, and we'll hopefully have some other things to talk about. That's what I'm guessing. You know, I'm thinking about like catalytic events and stuff like that. Something on that region. You know,
And
we're
if
around.
anybody wants to keep an eye on the story, Dr. Jefferies, you put out a newsletter that I read constantly. You just put one out, I think, today.
Yes, sir.
That is full of information there. Go to the website, sign up for that, and I'm telling you, keep your eye on this story because it's just really in my mind, it's just heating up. So this is an exciting story, one you could feel good about getting behind, right?
Yep.
So, all right, thank you, gentlemen, for taking your time to do this with me, and I'm looking forward to following up, and hopefully we'll see a very different reaction in the marketplace sometime soon.
Yeah,
Thank you for tuning in
Thank you,
to
sir.
another
Great seeing you.
CEO and
We've enjoyed being
CMO
on.
interview here
Okay.
at Alpha Wolf Capital. Today
Appreciate
we
it.
had Michael Feldschuh
guys.
and Dr.
Thank you.
Jefferies from Daxor, the Blood Volume Company. I hope you enjoyed today's interview, and if you did, do us a favor, give us a like. How about giving us a share? And while you're at it, make sure you smash that subscribe button. All of those things are extremely important to us here at Alpha Wolf Capital, and we appreciate you taking time to do that. Until next time, stay safe. Alpha Wolf Capital wishes you the very best of success.